Chapter 1. The Land Between Two Rivers. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in a region encompassing much of what is now modern Iraq, alongside parts of Syria and Turkey, lay one of humanity's most historically significant landscapes, a place ancient Greeks would eventually name Mesopotamia, meaning simply the land between rivers. These two great rivers flowed steadily southward from mountainous regions toward the Persian Gulf, their seasonal flooding depositing rich, fertile silt across the surrounding plains, creating agricultural conditions capable of supporting far larger populations than most surrounding regions could sustain. Unlike Egypt's remarkably predictable annual Nile flooding, Mesopotamian river flooding proved considerably more irregular and sometimes genuinely destructive, this environmental unpredictability shaping distinctive cultural attitudes and requiring sophisticated irrigation management for reliable agricultural success. The earliest farming communities in this region emerged roughly 9,000 years ago, small settlements gradually learning to cultivate wheat, barley, and other crops while domesticating sheep, goats, and cattle. These early agricultural villages laying essential foundations for everything that would eventually follow. Irrigation technology developed gradually but crucially throughout this early period. Communities constructing canals and channels, directing river water toward fields further from natural riverbanks. This practical engineering dramatically expanding cultivable land and supporting increasingly larger settled populations. This irrigation work required genuine cooperation and coordination between multiple communities sharing the same water sources. This practical necessity likely contributing significantly to the gradual development of more organized political structures and eventually genuinely centralized governmental authority. By around 4000 BCE, some Mesopotamian settlements had grown substantially larger than simple farming villages, developing into genuine towns with specialized craft production, organized religious structures, and increasingly complex social organization beyond simple family or kinship-based community arrangement. The region's relative lack of natural resources, including timber, stone, and metals, encouraged early development of extensive trade networks. Mesopotamian communities exchanging agricultural surplus and manufactured goods for materials imported from surrounding mountainous and distant regions. This combination of agricultural abundance, irrigation-driven cooperation, growing population density, and established trade networks created exactly the conditions from which humanity's first genuinely urban civilization would eventually emerge across these fertile river plains. Chapter 2. Sumer and the Birth of Cities. Around 3500 BCE, in southern Mesopotamia, a remarkable transformation occurred as several settlements grew into genuine cities. These urban centers, collectively belonging to a culture historians call Sumerian, representing what many scholars consider humanity's first true civilization. Uruk stands among the most significant of these early cities, growing to perhaps 40,000 residents at its height, an extraordinary population concentration for its era, requiring sophisticated organizational systems simply to manage food supply, water distribution, and basic civic administration. These Sumerian cities each functioned as independent city-states, controlling surrounding agricultural territory while maintaining their own distinct government, religious institutions, and often their own particular patron deity believed to specially protect and favor that specific urban community. Massive temple complexes called ziggurats dominated these cities architecturally and socially. These stepped pyramid structures rising above surrounding buildings, serving simultaneously as religious centers, administrative headquarters, and powerful symbols of each city's relationship with its patron deity. Temple institutions controlled substantial agricultural land and organized considerable economic activity. Priests managing grain storage, coordinating labor, and overseeing trade. This religious economic institution, representing one of history's earliest complex bureaucratic organizations. Social hierarchy developed considerably within these early cities, distinct classes emerging including priests, administrators, craftsmen, farmers, and eventually enslaved individuals. This stratification, representing significant departure from the more egalitarian structures typical of earlier village communities. Craft specialization flourished within urban environments, individuals dedicating themselves entirely to pottery, metalworking, textile production, or other specialized trades, rather than combining craftwork with farming. This specialization dramatically improving both quality and production volume. Warfare between competing city-states occurred periodically, cities constructing defensive walls while developing organized military forces, competition over water access, agricultural land, and trade routes, creating recurring tension between neighboring urban centers throughout Sumerian history. This remarkable Sumerian urban civilization, emerging gradually across these southern Mesopotamian plains, established fundamental patterns of city life, social organization, and institutional complexity that would influence human civilization for thousands of subsequent years. Chapter 3. The invention of writing among Mesopotamia's most transformative contributions to human civilization. The development of writing around 3200 BCE fundamentally changed how human societies could record, transmit, and preserve information across both distance and time. Writing emerged initially from practical administrative necessity rather than literary ambition, temple administrators needing reliable methods for tracking grain storage, livestock counts, and trade transactions across increasingly complex urban economic systems, requiring accurate record-keeping. The earliest writing used simple pictographs, small drawings representing specific objects or quantities. These symbols pressed into soft clay tablets using a reed stylus. The clay then dried or baked, creating remarkably durable records that have survived thousands of years. This early pictographic system gradually evolved into what scholars call cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped, describing the distinctive triangular marks created by pressing a reed stylus into clay. This writing system eventually representing sounds rather than merely objects, dramatically expanding its expressive capability. Cuneiform's development from simple record-keeping toward genuinely flexible written language required centuries of gradual refinement. Scribes progressively developing more sophisticated symbol systems capable of expressing abstract concepts, complex ideas, and eventually genuine literature. Scribal education became a significant institution within Mesopotamian society, schools training young students through years of intensive practice, this specialized literacy remaining limited to a relatively small professional class, rather than becoming widespread general education. Written records transformed administrative capability dramatically, allowing accurate long-term record-keeping, complex legal agreements, detailed trade documentation, and eventually the preservation of religious texts, historical accounts, and literary works across generations. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's earliest surviving literary works, emerged from this written tradition. This remarkable narrative poem, exploring themes of friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning that continue resonating with readers thousands of years later. This invention of writing represents arguably Mesopotamia's single most transformative contribution to human civilization, fundamentally changing humanity's relationship with knowledge, memory, and the possibility of preserving information across previously impossible spans of time and distance. Chapter 4. Daily Life in a Mesopotamian City. Ordinary daily life within Mesopotamian cities followed rhythms shaped by agriculture, craft production, religious observance, and the practical demands of urban living within these remarkably early experiments in dense human settlement. Most urban residents lived in modest mud brick homes, these structures typically featuring several rooms arranged around a central courtyard, this design providing both privacy and practical ventilation within the region's often intensely hot climate conditions. Bread and beer formed dietary staples for virtually all social classes, barley and wheat providing fundamental caloric foundation, beer serving both nutritional and practical purposes as a safer alternative to potentially contaminated water sources within densely populated urban environments. Fish, dates, onions, and various vegetables supplemented this grain-based diet, while meat remained more occasional for ordinary residents, wealthier households enjoying considerably more varied and abundant food than the modest fare typical of ordinary laboring families. Craftsmen worked in specialized workshops throughout these cities, potters, weavers, metalworkers, and other artisans producing goods for both local consumption and broader regional trade. This specialized production representing significant economic activity beyond simple agriculture. Markets provided essential exchange venues, though Mesopotamian economy functioned largely through barter and standardized weight systems rather than coined currency, silver serving as an important standard value measure long before actual coinage developed centuries later. Family structure typically centered around patriarchal households, though women held certain legal rights, including property ownership and business participation, some women achieving notable prominence as priestesses, merchants, or in various skilled professional capacities. Children received education according to family status and needs, most learning practical skills through family apprenticeship, while a small minority, primarily boys from wealthier families, attended formal scribal schools, training them in cuneiform writing and administration. Religious observance permeated daily life thoroughly. Household shrines, regular temple offerings, and numerous festivals structuring the annual calendar. This religious framework, providing both spiritual meaning and practical social structure, organizing communal urban life. This rich, complex urban daily life, unfolding within humanity's earliest genuine cities, established fundamental patterns of dense human settlement, specialized labor, and organized civic life that would characterize urban civilization throughout subsequent human history. Chapter 5. Gods, Temples, and Mesopotamian Religion. Mesopotamian religious belief developed an elaborate pantheon of deities, each associated with particular natural forces, human activities, or specific cities. This complex religious framework thoroughly shaping both individual daily experience and broader civic organization throughout the region. Anu, god of the sky, held theoretical supreme authority within this pantheon, though other deities including Enlil, associated with wind and storms, and Enki, connected with water and wisdom, often played more prominent roles within actual religious practice and mythology. Each major city maintained its own patron deity, believed to specifically protect and favor that particular urban community. This civic religious identity closely linking political authority with divine favor, kings often presenting themselves as chosen representatives of their city's patron god. Ziggurats served as these deities' earthly dwelling places, massive stepped structures rising above surrounding cityscape, priests conducting daily rituals within temple sanctuaries believed necessary for maintaining proper relationship between human communities and their powerful divine protectors. Mesopotamian religious understanding emphasized humanity's fundamental obligation to serve the gods through offerings, ritual observance, and proper behavior. This relationship generally understood as practical rather than deeply personal, gods requiring service rather than offering unconditional love. Divination played significant roles within Mesopotamian religious practice, specialists examining animal livers, observing celestial movements, and interpreting various omens believed to reveal divine will regarding important decisions. This practice representing genuinely systematic effort to understand divine intention. Mesopotamian afterlife beliefs remained notably somber compared to Egyptian traditions. The underworld generally understood as a shadowy, joyless existence, awaiting all people regardless of earthly virtue. This bleak vision, contrasting sharply with Egypt's more hopeful eternal life expectations. Religious festivals structured the annual calendar significantly, elaborate ceremonies marking agricultural cycles, seasonal changes, and important mythological events. These festivals providing both religious meaning and valuable communal social gathering opportunities throughout the year. This complex religious framework, thoroughly integrated into political authority, economic organization, and daily individual experience, represents one of history's earliest fully developed organized religious systems within a genuinely urban civilizational context. Chapter 6: Hammurabi and the Rule of Law. Around 1750 BCE, a Babylonian king named Hammurabi accomplished something remarkable, compiling and publicly displaying an extensive legal code covering numerous aspects of daily life, commerce, family relations, and criminal justice throughout his expanding Mesopotamian kingdom. This legal code, inscribed on a large stone pillar displayed publicly, contained nearly 300 specific laws addressing situations ranging from property disputes and trade regulations to marriage arrangements, medical practice standards, and criminal punishment guidelines. The code's public display represented genuinely significant innovation. Ordinary citizens theoretically able to know applicable legal standards rather than depending entirely on arbitrary official judgment. This transparency establishing important precedent for later legal traditions throughout human history. Hammurabi's laws applied different standards according to social class, penalties varying considerably depending on whether victims and perpetrators were nobles, commoners, or enslaved individuals. This stratified justice, reflecting broader Mesopotamian social hierarchy rather than modern equality principles. The famous principle, sometimes summarized as an eye for an eye, appears throughout this code, prescribing proportional retribution for various injuries, though in practice, financial compensation frequently substituted for physical punishment, particularly across different social class relationships. Commercial regulations occupied substantial portions of the code, addressing trade practices, loan interest rates, property rental, and business partnership arrangements. This extensive commercial law, reflecting Mesopotamia's sophisticated economic activity and genuine need for reliable business standards. Family law received considerable attention as well, the code addressing marriage contracts, inheritance rights, divorce procedures, and parental obligations. These provisions revealing considerable detail about Mesopotamian family structure and social expectations across different circumstances. Medical practice regulation appeared notably within the code, establishing both payment standards for successful treatment and serious penalties for surgical failure. This early medical regulation representing genuinely sophisticated approach to professional accountability. Hammurabi's code, while certainly not history's first legal system, represents the most complete surviving early legal compilation, offering extraordinary insight into Mesopotamian society while establishing enduring precedent for the idea that written, publicly known law should govern human society. Chapter 7. Science, Mathematics, and Astronomy. Mesopotamian scholars developed genuinely sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge. Their systematic approaches to calculation and celestial observation establishing foundations that would influence scientific development throughout subsequent civilizations across the ancient world. Mesopotamian mathematics used a base 60 numerical system, this choice explaining why modern timekeeping still divides hours into 60 minutes and minutes into 60 seconds. This ancient mathematical legacy persisting remarkably into contemporary daily life thousands of years later. Practical mathematical applications included land measurement, construction calculation, and complex commercial accounting. Scribes developing sophisticated techniques for solving genuinely difficult mathematical problems, including quadratic equations, centuries before Greek mathematical tradition emerged. Astronomical observation reached impressive sophistication. Mesopotamian scholars carefully tracking celestial movements across decades, recording detailed observations on clay tablets. This accumulated data eventually allowing accurate prediction of astronomical events, including eclipses. These astronomical records served both practical and religious purposes. Calendar calculation supporting agricultural planning, while celestial observation simultaneously provided divination material. Astronomers and priests often representing overlapping rather than separate professional categories. Mesopotamian calendar systems required regular adjustment, lunar month cycles not aligning neatly with solar years. Scholars developing sophisticated intercalation systems, adding periodic extra months to maintain reasonable alignment between calendar dates and actual seasonal agricultural cycles. Medical knowledge developed considerably as well. Surviving medical texts describing symptoms, diagnoses, and treatments for numerous conditions. This medical tradition, combining genuinely practical herbal remedies with religious and magical elements, reflecting broader Mesopotamian worldview. Engineering achievements included sophisticated irrigation systems, monumental architecture, and eventually genuinely impressive construction projects. Mesopotamian builders developing practical techniques for large-scale mud brick construction suited to their particular regional material availability. This substantial body of mathematical, astronomical, and practical scientific knowledge represents genuinely impressive intellectual achievement. Mesopotamian scholars establishing systematic observational and calculational approaches that meaningfully influenced subsequent scientific development throughout the ancient world. Chapter 8: Empires Rise. Akkad, Babylon, and Assyria. Throughout Mesopotamian history, various powers successively established broader imperial control over the region's competing city-states. These empires temporarily unifying territory before eventually fragmenting once again into competing smaller political entities. Sargon of Akkad established what many historians consider history's first genuine empire around 2334 BCE, conquering numerous Sumerian city-states and establishing centralized authority across substantial Mesopotamian territory. This achievement representing significant political innovation. The Akkadian Empire eventually declined after roughly 2 centuries. Various factors, including climate change, internal instability, and external pressure, contributing to this collapse. Mesopotamia subsequently fragmenting once again into competing regional powers. Babylon rose to significant prominence during Hammurabi's reign, this city establishing extensive regional control while developing its remarkable legal and administrative traditions, though Babylonian dominance similarly proved temporary rather than permanently sustained. The Assyrian Empire, emerging from northern Mesopotamia, eventually established the region's most extensive imperial control, particularly during the 9th through 7th centuries BCE, developing sophisticated military organization and administrative systems managing genuinely vast territory. Assyrian rulers constructed impressive capital cities, including Nineveh, these urban centers featuring elaborate palaces decorated with detailed stone reliefs depicting royal achievements, hunting scenes, and various ceremonial activities demonstrating imperial power and prestige. The Assyrian library at Nineveh, assembled by King Ashurbanipal, collected thousands of cuneiform tablets covering literature, science, religion, and administration. This remarkable collection, representing one of the ancient world's most significant preserved knowledge repositories. Assyrian imperial control eventually collapsed around 612 BCE, a coalition of former subject peoples successfully overwhelming Assyrian forces. This dramatic collapse demonstrating how even sophisticated ancient empires remained vulnerable to combined external pressure and internal strain. Babylon experienced a final significant revival following Assyrian collapse. The Neo-Babylonian Empire briefly establishing renewed regional dominance before eventually falling to Persian conquest in 539 BCE, effectively concluding independent Mesopotamian imperial power. Chapter 9: Art, Architecture, and Cultural Achievement. Mesopotamian artistic and architectural achievement developed distinctive characteristics reflecting both available regional materials and the particular religious and political priorities shaping this early urban civilization across its long historical development. Mud bricks served as the primary construction material throughout Mesopotamia. This practical choice, reflecting the region's abundant clay alongside its notable scarcity of quality building stone, requiring distinctive architectural techniques suited to this particular material's properties. Ziggurats represented Mesopotamian architecture's most distinctive achievement, these massive stepped structures requiring enormous coordinated labor and sophisticated engineering, their imposing presence dominating city landscapes as powerful symbols of religious and civic identity. Palace architecture developed considerable sophistication, particularly during later imperial periods. Assyrian palaces featuring elaborate decorated halls, detailed stone reliefs, and impressive gateway sculptures, including massive human-headed winged bulls guarding important entrances. Cylinder seals represented a uniquely Mesopotamian artistic form. Small carved stone cylinders rolled across wet clay, creating distinctive impressions. These seals serving practical identification purposes while displaying remarkably detailed miniature artistic scenes. Sculpture developed distinctive stylistic characteristics. Human figures typically depicted with large staring eyes, clasped hands, and formal, somewhat rigid postures, these conventions reflecting religious and artistic traditions rather than attempts at naturalistic representation. Metalworking achieved genuine sophistication, craftsmen producing elaborate jewelry, weapons and ceremonial objects from gold, silver, copper, and eventually bronze. These valuable materials often imported through extensive trade networks, reaching distant mountain regions. Textile production represented significant economic and artistic activity. Mesopotamian woolen textiles becoming important trade goods. Workshops, sometimes employing hundreds of workers, producing fabrics for both local consumption and extensive regional export. This distinctive artistic and architectural tradition, shaped by regional materials, religious priorities, and political requirements, left behind monuments and objects that continue offering valuable insight into this remarkable early civilization's values, capabilities, and daily concerns. Chapter 10: Mesopotamia's Enduring Legacy. Closing chapter. As Persian conquest concluded independent Mesopotamian political power in 539 BCE, the region's remarkable civilizational achievements had already established foundations influencing human civilization across virtually every subsequent era and geographic region. Writing itself, Mesopotamia's most transformative innovation, spread throughout the ancient world, various writing systems developing independently elsewhere, but Mesopotamian cuneiform, representing humanity's earliest documented systematic written communication. Urban civilization, first genuinely achieved within Mesopotamian city-states, established fundamental patterns of dense settlement, specialized labor, social hierarchy, and organized civic administration that continue characterizing human societies throughout the modern world. Legal tradition, exemplified through Hammurabi's publicly displayed code, established enduring precedent for written, publicly known law governing society. This principle underlying legal systems throughout subsequent human history across countless different cultures and civilizations. Mathematical and astronomical achievements, particularly the base 60 system, still governing modern timekeeping and angular measurement, represent remarkably persistent Mesopotamian legacy influencing daily contemporary life in ways most people never consciously recognize. Literary tradition, particularly the Epic of Gilgamesh, established narrative themes exploring friendship, mortality, and meaning that continue resonating powerfully with modern readers. This ancient story, representing humanity's earliest surviving substantial literary achievement. Agricultural and irrigation techniques, developed throughout Mesopotamian history, spread widely. These practical innovations, supporting agricultural development throughout surrounding regions, and, gradually, considerably more distant civilizations connected through expanding trade networks. Archaeological excavation throughout the region, continuing actively today, regularly reveals additional insight into this remarkable civilization. Cuneiform tablets, particularly valuable given their extraordinary durability, thousands of texts still awaiting complete translation and scholarly analysis. Modern understanding of Mesopotamia continues developing significantly. Each new archaeological discovery and textual translation revealing additional detail about humanity's earliest urban civilization, our appreciation for their remarkable achievements deepening with continued scholarly attention. And so, as this long journey through humanity's first great civilization finally settles toward its quiet close, let these ancient river plains, towering ziggurats, and patient scribes pressing reeds into soft clay carry you now gently toward whatever peaceful rest awaits, following the quiet rhythms of a civilization that first taught humanity how to build cities, write words, and preserve memory itself across the long, patient flow of time.